They are getting pretty.
Very good. It is 1 o'clock, and we will begin the Tax-Exempt Review Committee. We kind of have a lot of activity going on. We just had the budget proposed by the mayor, so I apologize. And Jackie, you can sit there if you wish to, or you're welcome to sit up here. It's totally up to you. The rest of our members, a couple of them are going to be joining us in progress. So if that's all right, we'll begin. We'll start with agenda item number 1. Approve Tax-Exempt Review Committee meetings of the 6/25/2019 meeting. I don't know if there's any changes or corrections, otherwise we will accept a motion.
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to accept the minutes from the June 25th, 2019 meeting.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Number 2, summary of pilot applications, staff summary of the payment in lieu of tax application submitted. Jim, will you start us out?
I think what we'll do then is just move to the first application is DFI BJ. This is the Kessler project. It's located immediately west of the Black Building. I provided a memo just because it's kind of an unusual request, is because the specific request for the pilot exemption is just going to be for the south half of the building. The reason for that is that, and sort of a little bit of the background on this, we had in 2014, 2015, the city was looking at where to put another parking facility downtown. There were 2 locations that kind of emerged as the top contenders, including this, where we ultimately decided to build. And so in 2015, we created a renewal plan in a TIF district to help finance that future parking garage. And so the TIF plan is everything from the city parking lot, which is kind of the north half of that southerly block, and everything to the north of 2nd Avenue. And so we created a TIF district, and to capture the increment for that to go towards this parking facility. The city then entered into a public-private partnership with Kilbourne Group. We were able to, initially the phase 1 was construction of the parking garage north of 2nd Avenue along with the Roberts wrap. The property on the far north was owned by a private party. We didn't know when or if that would actually develop. Fortunately, that actually developed much faster than we expected, and now that's the Dillard building to the north. As part of the public-private partnership, the city sold the lot behind the Black Building, and one of the conditions of that was that they would only apply for a Renaissance zone incentive, and there would not be any pilot that would go beyond the 5 years. However, that just applies to the north half of what's now the Kessler project. So this specific request, in keeping with that agreement, they're only applying for the pilot on the south half of the building. And
I believe there's some type of penalty for your phone going off while you're giving a presentation. I don't know for sure what it is, but.
Sure what it is either. And so the application we looked at for the but-for test, initially we weren't sure how the pilot and the TIF were going to work together, and so we had to do some research, and that's why we had delayed it at the last meeting. And so now the specific request is for a pilot payment that would be 0 in years 6 through 15 on the south half only. However, they would start to pay property taxes on the north half of the building in the amount of about $136,000 a year, starting in year 6. And so overall, with this new proposal, they're actually paying more than their initial request by about $30,000 a year. I talked to our financial consultant on the but-for test. He had actually assumed a little bit a larger property tax number, assumed that there'd be some inflation, that there wouldn't be. So the rate of return, instead of being 9.95, 9.99% is actually 9.95, so very insignificant change in their rate of return, and so it certainly still meets the but-for test. So their specific request for the pilot would be, and how the exemption would work is they would have a Renaissance zone exemption first 5 years on both the north and south side of the building. In year 6, they would begin to pay property taxes on the north side of the building for whatever it would be based on the value in the mill levy at that time. And then on the south half of the building, to make this project feasible, they would have a 0 property tax payment in years 6 through 15. So I think this is a good project. I included some information in the memo, just I think to demonstrate how this renewal plan has worked overall. And so if you look at the 3rd page of your memo, what you see is when we went into this, we wanted to try to build at least 400 parking spots. We ended up building 454. We were hoping for $30 million in private investment. With this additional parcel, we're now going to be at $44 million. This TIF, because of the financing, was limited to 20 years, would be a maximum of 20 years. We're already 3 years into that. And so at the end, what we're going to have, instead of vacant parking lots around that entire yellow area with only about, the city only had 150 parking spaces in there, plus some private ones. We're going to have a 450 car parking garage. We're going to have a $44 million in private tax base. And the new property taxes off this area, when this is all done, will be over $600,000 a year. And you can see the breakdown by the school district, the city, the county, and parks. And so I think overall, with this final phase being approved, we'll have big picture, very, very excellent redevelopment in our downtown. As far as this Kessler project, the entire north-south will be 95 housing units, 85 parking spots, about 13,000 square feet of retail. So I know the developers here, if you want to make any additional comments, or if you have any questions for me or the developer.
Do we have any questions for Jim? And Mike, or any of the developer, if you want to get up and speak, you can. Otherwise, I don't know if anybody has any questions. Go ahead.
Okay, well, thanks, Commission here, and I want to pull up a slide, pull up a few images that describe the project. As we are pulling these up, I'll give you some additional background. As Jim described, the piece of property that we're talking about is directly west of the now what we call Stone Building, or was previously known as the Avalon Building. So that piece of property became available. While we were planning the project, we saw that opportunity. We knew it would be best for this, for this block and the neighborhood to develop that piece of property right away. And we're here presenting this full project. As Jim described, when we completed the RFP for this competitive process, when Kilbourne Group submitted that, I think there was an estimated of about $30 million that we were proposing to build private development on this piece of property. And with this, we will be, well over $40 million of private development on the property. Okay, so if this gray box right here is describing the Stone Building, or the old Avalon Building. This is Roberts Alley right here. 2nd Avenue right here. So Youngblood Coffee is located right on that street. Worst Beer Hall is located right here. So we are proposing a building that goes from 1st Avenue up to 2nd Avenue. This would be the first floor. We would have retail along 2nd Avenue and through Roberts Alley. So when you're familiar with Scoop and Dough, that would be another retail bay right here. And then we would also have retail along 1st Avenue over here. We would have parking on the 1st floor right here, and then a ramp that goes down, and then that provides additional parking for over here. Because of the amount of, I'd say the limited parking spaces that we have access to in the Roberts garage, because that's a garage that the city of Fargo owns, and you have public parking in that garage as well. We do need to have this additional parking underneath here, which is creating some additional expenses from construction. We have alleys on both sides with a lot of infrastructure in those alleys. So when we've completed our construction estimates with the shoring cost, the proximity to stone, have submitted that information to the third party for their review. That results in the application that we are submitting for today. I'll just highlight the next couple projects. This is the Massey model of this. You can see the stone building in this project, so it would be 6 stories high. This is what it would look like. Again, this is the Avalon building, and Halbersted's would be in this location. And this would be the Roberts Alley with Black building off to your left. And this is the now current parking lot that would have a new building in that location. So with that, if there's any questions that you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Do we have any questions from anybody? So basically, Jim, could you summarize, I mean, it was our intention, and obviously it was quite a few years ago now, that this would be part of that redevelopment. It's just taken a while for that part of this to take effect. Would you say that's correct?
That's correct. In addition, because Kilbourne's been able to acquire both of the parking lots adjacent to the stone building, the project's actually growing larger in scope. And so, again, this is a pilot. It'll Renaissance Zone pilot together run for 15 years, but it's only on half the building. It meets the but-for test, so I think overall it really fits with our policy. Essentially, they're going to be paying about 50% property taxes in year 6 going into that TIF, and so it also conforms with the development agreement that we have for the overall renewal area.
Can I ask one more question? So then, has this been reviewed similar to our other projects that we do? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this has been reviewed by our financial advisor. They've recommended that it would not take place without this development. The rate of return is just below 10%. Generally, investors aren't going to invest in a project unless that rate of return is between 10 and 15%. So I think this fits the criteria, and overall, it really fits with our policy and be a great addition to the downtown.
And Mike, do you mind if I put you on the spot real quick? So, we're talking about opportunity zones, and we talk about the rate of return. A lot of people think that the 8% is fairly competitive, but in the world of investments, you're competing around the country. Maybe if you don't mind talking a little bit about that, we're in competition, basically.
Sure. All of these projects require a significant amount of capital to have them move forward and to receive financing from the bank. And there's all the financial metrics that are needed to make a project move forward. And yes, we are, Fargo. It's Fargo as a city. Fargo in the region, Fargo, across the country is competing for that investment into real estate, like any other city is. And so I guess it just goes to justify and explain the reason for the returns that are needed for a project to receive the financing from a bank.
Any other comments or questions? Jim, do you have any final thoughts you want to share with us? Otherwise, we'll move on. We'll accept a motion and move from there.
I don't have anything else.
Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as submitted.
And do we have a second?
Make Gosgrip work a bit here.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. So that's
It's a great project, Dave. I think it's really a good project that's going forward, and that area is filling out right nicely, so keep it up.
And I would totally agree. And I also, this has taken longer. We didn't really know how this would all But that's well above and beyond what I have ever envisioned there, and so I think we're very fortunate, and I think it'll be a great addition to that area. And our downtown is, it's booming, that's for sure. So Jim, we'll move on, number 4, is that the next item on the agenda?
Yeah, we'll move on to the request from Aldebaran. This is a request for pilot payment because of job creation. It would be 100% property tax exemption for the first 5 years and a 50% property tax exemption from the second 5 years. I took a look back at Aldebaran had received that very same type of incentive for their building they began in 2016. And it was interesting to look at the application because in 2016, they had 109 employees, and they anticipated that over the next 5 years, they would add 85 employees. And so we gave them the property tax exemption. What's happened is within 3 years, they've actually created over 200 jobs. So talk about kind of under-promising and over-delivering. And probably about half the time, they've created double the number of jobs that were anticipated. This next phase would be anticipated to be 100 jobs over 3 years. 50% of those jobs would be paying over $58,000 a year. Most of the rest would be in the $30,000 to $58,000 a year range. I'll let the developer talk about that a little bit more. It would add $7.5 million to the payroll. Capital investment is $43 million, including a 180,000 square foot new building and a 20,000 square foot addition to the existing building. And the property tax exemption would be 100% for 5 years, 50% for the second 5 years. When they start paying 50%, that'll actually be $300,000 a year, and it would increase in year 11 to an anticipated $600,000 a year. The representatives of Aldebaran are here, and so maybe they can tell us a little bit about the business and what their plans are for the future.
Say, Jim, while Brian approaches, can I ask you a question? You mentioned that this applicant gave them incentives back in 16, 3 years ago. So is that building number 1 still on its program, and this application is only for the new construction? Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, sorry.
Go ahead, Brian.
Thank you, Jim. Mr. Chairman, Mayor, members of the committee, thank you for consideration of our application. As Jim has said, we're very excited to expand our operation in a campus of the first of which we hope will be 3 more buildings we build in a global campus here. This will serve as, this next building is expansion to our clinical and commercial grade production services. We manufacture biologic material for biotech and pharmaceutical companies globally. Business, because of curative medicine, personalized medicine, has created a ton of demand for the services that we provide. Our competitors are mainly based in the East Coast, West Coast, and in Europe. So what we're building here will really won't be anything else that exists like it globally. We have a pretty good position within the market, and again, a ton of demand based on great technology that our clients are producing, and very proud to be expanding in Fargo, creating jobs locally, and appreciate the support that the city's granted in the past. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about the company that you may have or our project.
Any questions, Mr. Mayor?
Brian, I'm really happy to see this. I was at your open house when you first opened this new building, so it's really fantastic to see you're coming back here so quick, because I remember talking at that time that you might expand. I was just wondering if, could I do a blood test and just come over there and say, here's the parts I need fixed? Because you guys are making stuff that's unbelievable, and you did some gene manipulation that allowed a girl to see. I mean, it's just fantastic work that's going on over there. So yeah, this is a fantastic idea, and I'm really glad that you're growing, because I knew your opportunities also were in a different community. So for you guys to, and in Europe as well. So this is fantastic for Fargo to have you guys continue to grow.
I don't know if it's appropriate, Mr. Mayor, to ask for personal favors from people asking for tax exemption. But the thing that strikes me is, Brian, some of the new positions, the wages, $28 to $35 an hour, 48 new positions. That's from the Tax-Exempt Review Committee perspective, that's what we want, our high-wage new jobs, and that's exactly what you're doing. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the positions that we've created, one thing that's when I started with the company 6 years ago, and you heard the number from Jim where we were at back in 2016, we were at 45 people when I started with the company 6 years ago. So a high concentration of the positions were operator positions. The great thing about the sort of growth that we have, especially when we're having global headquarters here, that in addition to very good manufacturing jobs, we along the way create a lot of jobs in quality assurance, quality control, validation, all the administrative jobs. Again, our headquarters is here. So much like we've exceeded expectations before, I think it's sort of the Fargo Midwestern way that to underpromise jobs. We hope to do that again. We hope the 105 in the application that we exceed that by probably 2-3-fold actually in the time frame. But a lot of this, of course, is based on regulatory decisions that the FDA and equivalent agency in Europe is making, the progression of the technology. Again, this is to the mayor's point, curative medicine that's created demand for our services. So they're fixing defective genes in cancer patients, they're actually curing the cancer, and we're in the supply chain for this. Is a massive movement. Things can happen, but we don't see any change or slowdown in sight. We see a long runway for growth for the next at least decade based on these technologies. So we did, again, I think, take a pretty conservative approach for the number of jobs as well as the wages of the jobs. I would expect that we would exceed both.
Any other questions? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
I would move to approve the recommendation.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Thank you, Brian. Good luck. We appreciate you being here in Fargo, and you can't go into politics if you're going to be under-promising and over-delivering. That's our area. All right, moving on. Number 5, application for pilot transfer to can you pronounce that? Zadok?
No.
Sadiq.
Can you
I'll
pronounce
have
it?
the developer get up here, or the person that's going to be acquiring the property.
Well, I just want to pronounce it correctly, so if you can tell us how. Zadik? Very good. We're fast learners, so thank you very much for the, transfer Zadik, Sioux Falls Portfolio 3 on Woodrow Wilson Apartments. Jim?
This is a transfer of a pilot incentive that had been previously granted. The way the state law reads, if a business closes or has a major change in ownership, it has to come back to the city for review. And so the terms that you had approved previously are exactly the same. Kilbourne's downtown fund is selling this particular property so they can make other investments. This applies to the Woodrow Wilson apartment building and also a small daycare center, I believe it's on the site. And so, again, there's no change at all to the terms. This had gone through the but-for test when it was originally done, and so really it's just a change of ownership, but that requires approval of the city. I don't know if you want to talk to the developer or the purchaser of the property, and if you have any questions, I'll let them address those.
I have a question for you, Jim. Can you talk about, so where are we now in the term? How far are we down? And just if you can give us a summary of that. What year are we in? And that's my question for you, if you have it available.
I believe we're just, at the very beginning of the incentive because it's only been opening about a year. I think the term was over a 20-year period, so I think we're only about 1 year into the incentive, and I don't think Ben included that because it really didn't. I guess it's.
No, that's, and if you don't mind, if it goes on to the city commission, if you could just have that information for us, that'd be great, just from the reference standpoint, just so we know when it started and what's left to go. I just think it would be good for our own record. I guess, like you said, it began at the bottom of page 28, it says beginning in year 2018. So like you said, this is just the second year, correct?
Make sure I'm on the right.
So on page 28 of our pamphlet or our booklet.
Yeah, it began in, yeah, you're right, on page 28, began in 2018. So I believe it would be about 2 years into this. run through the tax year 2038.
Very good, thank you. So I don't know if there's any other questions, but basically this is just a technical, we're just changing the owner from one to another, and this is a requirement.
And if you look on page 32 of your book, you can see that payment schedule.
Any other comments or questions about it? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. The last item on our agenda is applications for pilot transfer on Block 9. Jim?
When the Block 9 development was approved, the pilot tax exemptions were provided to Block 9 partners. This is similar in that, while the ownership group is the same, it's being split up into different, kind of 4 different groups. Before it was all kind of by Block 9 partners, and now there'll be actually 4 different entities that'll be getting the pilot exemption. It's 100% exemption for 20 years. Again, we're not changing the terms of the exemption. We did do a but-for test when this was approved. And so the 4 groups are, there's an ownership group that will own the commercial space, an ownership group, RDO, will own their office space. There's speculative office space that is also owned by RDO, but in a different ownership group. And then there's a hotel group that's, originally TMI was going to be part of that, but now it's a different REM group. And so, again, really no changes to the terms of the agreement, no changes to the public-private partnership that the City Commission had previously approved. And so we're just looking for recommendation. Again, this is just ownership transfers, not change in the application.
Jim, how did we break out the values of each one of these 4 components? Was that done previously, or was there some kind of evaluation breakout done now through this?
I don't know if this assessor come up with these numbers, or Mr. Zimney, do you have that? Or do you have how that ownership value was broken up?
For the application, we prorated it based on square footages
Okay.
from the original application.
I guess one other note on the Block 9, there are 6 condominium units. They are not receiving any property tax exemptions. They'll pay the property taxes from the first year. That money going into the TIF fund that's then helping pay for that plaza.
Any other questions or comments? Otherwise, we'll accept a motion.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Anything else on the agenda? Otherwise, I think that's it.
I think just one other thing I wanted to alert you to is the North Dakota Housing Finance Agency this week now is accepting proposals for affordable housing projects through the low-income housing tax credit program. So I expect over the next month to begin to see some applications for the property tax exemptions related to these housing applications. One of the criteria for whether or not you get selected for state funding is whether there's local support. Is there demonstrated local support? So, providing some sort of support for these projects is going to be important, because it tends to be very competitive with maybe only 20% of the applications getting approved. Fortunately, last year we weren't any approved in Fargo. I think there'll be 3 that'll be reapplying this year, plus possibly 1 additional one. So I'll have more information for you at future.
Can I ask Jim, is there any way we can proactively send a letter saying that, once again, we didn't get any last year and we would like to get all of ours approved this year? Is there anything we can do as a group or as a city?
I think letters of support for each of the applications would be important, so I can work with community development staff on.
And so
getting some
Dan,
letters.
Dan from Beyond Shelters here too, if you need us to write a letter, or if you need some kind of city notification or whatever, however we can help you, you let us know, because I think we want to do all we can to get those going.
Perhaps
Okay?
perhaps we can get the county to be more supportive this year also.
Good luck with that. All right, that's the end of our meeting. We are adjourned. Have a good afternoon.